WYOO, Panama City, a Magic Broadcasting radio station. 101.1 FM.
We must stand up every day and catch the stories that others might miss.
And online with breaking news from Panama City.
There is a lot of that. You have the truth on your side.
This is NewsTalk at 101. Really refreshing.
7:05. Scott Mager from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team normally joins us at 7 o'clock. Brian Parúas, you may have heard Brian Parúas with Scott a few different times. He's going to be joining us. First of all, greetings and good morning to you, Mr. Brian Parúas. What's going on?
Hey, man. All is well. Another day here in the trenches, but no complaints. I was able to sleep in today till about 5 in the morning, so I was pretty excited about that.
Wow. Wow.
That's the way I roll, baby. No gym this morning, but I thought about it. I did think about it.
Yeah.
It was on my mind.
I tell you, man, it's when you got a career going and you got kids and you got the family. Trust me, look at me. It's hard. It's hard to find any time to get out and do something like that.
It's very hard. Very hard.
So Scott is doing a little bit of media, I guess, concerning the Geiger case. Is that it?
Yeah, he's been doing a few national spots, which is pretty cool. Court TV. He's been very, very busy dealing with that whole verdict and the sentencing. So, yeah, he's been all over the place with that, which is just an unfortunate, story every way around. Any way you look at it, it's just a terrible situation.
I was saying earlier, I'm so disappointed that that's one of the things that I've been missing because of the Trump impeachment, Trump, and the Geiger case kind of got off my radar. But boy, it's consumed a lot of people. I hate even bringing it up because I really just don't know a whole lot about it. But I know that it was contentious there for a while.
It sure was. I mean, listen. At the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, there's an innocent person who's dead. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's the story. Somebody's dead, and it was a young man with a really impressive background and career, just starting off his life, and he's dead. I mean, it's just horrible. I mean, I don't know how you can just, sit back and not. It just hurts, from being a human, being a parent. It's just super painful, just to even watch.
Totally agreed, Brian. The one question I have is, so when she entered the apartment that she didn't know. Sorry, we'll get to the hurricane stuff, but I got to pick your brain for a second. When she entered the apartment. And she was thinking that it was her apartment. She saw somebody. She immediately pulled the weapon, shot him twice. Is that correct?
That's what it sounds like. I mean, I was former law enforcement myself, and it really always comes down to training. When you're trained properly, it just takes over. You don't even think. So to me, not knowing her or knowing how she was trained, it sounds like there may have been a training issue. We always train, see a weapon, draw a weapon. Don't go into a firefight unless you have to. Always call for backup. All kinds of things that are they become second nature. And to me, as a former federal air marshal, training was awful. I hated training days. They were so stressful. When you were done, you felt like you literally were in a firefight for your life. And I think that's the way training has to be. You've got to suffer through it. It's got to be awful. And when you're done, you feel like, God, that was terrible. I don't want to do it again. Because you're carrying a weapon on an airplane. Or you're carrying a weapon, in a place where people live, single-family homes, or in an area where your gun goes off, you can kill innocent people. So it's got to be painful. It's got to be terrible. And you've got to feel like the training is as real as the real thing.
Yeah. Wow. I can't even imagine. I have a friend of mine that goes to gun training, and he's a real pro-gun guy, and he goes to this training that's out in Las Vegas, and it's not just, shooting at some targets. They take you through real training. And every time he comes back, he talks about the responsibility of owning a gun and what happens when you actually pull the gun legally and you shoot somebody, what happens legally. And I don't think a lot of people even know that from the civilian side, but I can't even imagine being on the law enforcement side of it and walking into a situation like that and that happening and how bad you would feel. I mean, God Almighty, I can't imagine.
Listen, I totally get it. My former colleagues were the first air marshals ever to have to use their weapons during their service, killed an innocent person who they thought was carrying a bomb in the jet bridge back towards the aircraft. This made national headlines. And people heard, "Stop, police, let me see your hands, stop." And they warned them 3 to 4 times until they had to neutralize them. And they shoot to stop. Remember, we aren't trained to shoot to kill, unlike what Geiger said on the stand. We are trained to shoot to stop the threat. Kill is never, it's not even in our vocabulary. We're just going to shoot until the person stops coming. When they stop coming, you stop shooting.
Wow.
That's the way you're trained. You're there to protect. You're there, like in that situation with the air marshals, you were there to prevent this person who said he had a bomb coming towards a fully fueled aircraft with all their passengers in it. So their goal was, we got to get in between the bomb and the passengers. So, but again, you're trained to shoot to stop, not to kill.
Brian Parúas from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team. Scott will be on a little bit later. I was talking to Scott the other day, and we happened to mention that you were really good. And one of the times when you guys were in the studio, we talked about this, about how good you are at making a rapport with some of these desk level adjusters and working your way and kind of getting in there and talking to these people. And that, to me, again, is still the number one thing. People waiting and waiting and waiting. And I often say that it would be great if you've been caught up in this crap of not getting paid or not fully paid, and you're pulling your hair out at this point because, Christ, it's coming up on a year. In 7, 8, it'll be a year coming up soon, 7 days.
Yeah.
So with that said, it would be great just to be able to say, here, Brian, Scott, you guys just take the wheel. You guys go for it. Here's the thing. Are you still having successes with getting through to the right people? Is that something that you're spending every day on at this point?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, Kramer, so at the end of the day, you're building rapport with these adjusters, not because, you're trying to get something out of them for nothing. We just want to make sure our clients are on their radar screen. So it takes a lot, obviously, and it's very exhausting to be on the phone all day, emailing them. I've been emailing since I got here to work, so I've been talking to adjusters. Hey, man, what's going on? Yep, talked to the clients yesterday. We should have some information for you shortly. So if they forget about you, just go back to the bottom of the list. But if you're every day talking to these folks, and sometimes it's the same adjuster for multiple cases, so I bring them all up at the same time and let them know, hey, listen, we care about our clients. These people are still living in shambles, and the fact that they're tough doesn't mean they don't want their money to rebuild. They're just tough. Listen, the people in Panama City, they're not your normal people. They get stuff done on their own if they need to, unlike the people who live in South Florida they don't know how to even change a tire. It's a different mentality, and it's true. They got to call AAA because their tire's low on air pressure. Give me a break. Come on. Get out, go to the gas station, pump it up with air, put a plug in it. Come on, move on. But that's not the mentality in Panama City. They get it done. They get it, but that's why they've been getting taken advantage of as well, because these are folks that are patient, they're well-mannered, and that works against them during these negotiations.
Is it any different on the commercial side as far as that's concerned, contacting and getting the right people on the phone to make the decisions?
Yeah, it's very similar. The only difference with commercial, you typically have more veteran adjusters working these claims because they're usually in the multiple millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you have better adjusters typically. You get lower level adjusters on these typically these hurricane claims that aren't as valuable. The more valuable the claim, the bigger the dollar amount, the higher level adjuster you usually get. And again, these people are pros. When you're dealing with one of these litigation adjusters, they've been doing this 30 years. They can smell the file. They know what it's worth. That's how good they are. And that's the truth. But you got to get to them. And you don't always get to them initially. And now with all these claims floating around, the only way to get to them is by filing a lawsuit, which sounds super scary. You're like, oh, my God, I don't want to file a lawsuit. No, listen, you're going to have to. There's no other choice. That's where the pressure comes in, and that's where Scott and his litigation team comes in, and we start working the case. But we don't want to work the case. We just want to settle it. We don't want to work the sin out of it. It's not our style. We want to get the cases closed. But sometimes you got to put that pressure on these folks so they start spending money. And now the $100,000 claim is more like a $200,000 claim because they're paying their attorneys, then they got to pay us.
Yeah, it should be criminal. I was talking to Scott the other day. My wife was telling me about a friend and what they were going through, and how they had, I think they had about 100, or I want to say 80 or 90, actually, $80,000 or $90,000 worth of damage on their home. The insurance company was wanting to pay them $10,000, and they kept going back and forth, back and forth. Finally, they get an attorney, and the attorney wound up, I think, getting, I want to say, $115,000 or something like that. But until you get the pressure right, nothing's going to happen. And you can't put the pressure on them like an attorney and threaten litigation and a lawsuit. And I would assume that's not the goal, of course, to go to litigation and get to that far. The goal is to apply the pressure and not to, sound like, Gambino, or anything.
Right,
but it is something that is, we're finding out and learning, that's required at this point.
And it's very sad that you have to file a lawsuit against your own insurance carrier you've been paying premiums to sometimes in upwards of 20 years, and you got to sue them. It makes no sense. This is not something that should be happening. It's ridiculous, but it's really the only way at this juncture. Think about it. We're going to be a year out in a couple days. What else are you going to do? They obviously haven't paid the full amount because your house is still destroyed. So what else can you do? And sometimes the very adjusters, Kramer, tell us, you know what? My authority is limited at $100,000. I really need to file a lawsuit. I'm like, you're telling me to file? I'm like, yeah. In order to get to the next echelon of monies, the people who have more authority, you got to file a lawsuit just to get there. And that's also ridiculous. Why don't you just give that adjuster all the authority to settle it? Because they know the longer they keep the money on their side, the more money they make on interest. The money's being held here and whatever, some crazy account overseas. I don't know how they do it, but again, they're making money on your money. So these steps are done purposely.
Let me ask you this. At this late in the game, we're a year out, and somebody contacts the office, and you guys go and you do your thing. Is it because there's so many cases and so many insurance policies and claims out there? Does it bog down, or does that really matter as far as timing?
No, yeah. What's going to be bogged down is going to be the Bay County, court system. That's what's going to be bogged down because they're not used to this type of volume. That'll be where it gets bogged down. But typically, they still have to respond in a timely fashion. Now basically the court is overseeing everything. So they just can't get away with not responding or not providing an excuse why they can't respond. So again, that's the beauty of the system, is they are forced to respond and they're forced to move. And when they see, man, what defenses do I have? I have a Category 5 hurricane ripped through Panama City and then neighboring cities. And what am I going to say? It was pre-existing? I can't. So the normal excuses that they make for a pipe breaking or a water leak, they can't do with this hurricane. It's just an impossibility.
Brian Parúas from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team, 850-233-9988 if you got a question. Caller, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, it's Scott Mager.
Hey, man.
Scott Mager? Oh, my God. I love that guy.
Isn't he amazing?
Can I get a T-shirt?
He's a hell of a dancer.
What's going on, bud? How are you, Scott?
Great. How you guys doing, pal?
Doing good. I watched I didn't get a chance to watch the link that you sent until this morning, and I watched as you were talking about Geiger, and we opened up the show. We were talking very briefly about Amber Geiger and that whole case. So yeah, have you been making the rounds this morning?
I have. There was a national show that was on this morning that covered this situation. So I talked about why I thought I had originally predicted that she would be found guilty and what some of the mistakes that were made, by both sides. So very interesting and tragic situation. But if people don't realize that even after the verdict came down and she got 10 years, Gene Botham Jean's brother actually went up to her and hugged her in court and forgave her.
Oof. Powerful.
Amazing. And it was powerful. And the judge, in a bizarre situation, came down off the bench after the case, handed her a Bible, and asked her if she wanted to pray with her, and told her that she could be out in as early as 5 years.
What?
I know.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? And Kramer, does this pick Scott's brain? So does that make an issue for appeal, Scott? these weird kind of antics that occurred after the verdict was read?
I do think that it creates some interesting issues, but the reality is that the judge gave so many favorable instructions to the defense. The best argument on appeal, in my opinion, is the admission of certain, text messages or sexting messages between her and the married, police partner, saying whether or not those things were relevant. I think that she probably loses her appeal because I think that they made a mistake and tried to contend that she was somehow tired from her shift. And once you do that, then I can bring in messages or any evidence to show, well, no, you aren't tired. You wanted to have a sexual rendezvous with, this married man who was, a police partner. I just think that, she's got a very tough road to hoe on appeal because they gave so many defense-oriented instructors to give her every chance in the world to be acquitted.
They zoomed in on the judge's face at one point when Amber Geiger got up and she went in front of the witness stand and was crying, and then they adjourned. I don't know if you saw that moment. That was one of the few moments of this whole thing that I did see. And they panned over to the judge, and her facial expressions were, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing this? And she's, and it was very odd. Did you happen to catch that?
It's interesting, some of the behaviors of judges and how they do truly impact the jury. I think that her problem, I predicted she would get on the stand, even though many said she wouldn't. I said there was the only chance she would have would be to be on the stand. And I said she would do a lot of crying, which she did. But the problem was that she was crying constantly, and when she made the 911 call, she wasn't crying.
Yeah.
The 911 call, she's saying I wasn't in my apartment, and she's busy texting her former partner telling him that she screwed up. And so it was not consistent. And what they should have done is they should have brought in, some witnesses that would talk about how she is an excellent officer and that she does great work in the community and all kinds of things, and humanized her. And then, she shouldn't have said, well, I intended to kill the guy. She should have said, when I walked into place, I thought the guy was coming at me and I feared for my life. And, I shot him, and I hope to God I didn't kill him. I mean, it's tragic I did that. But one of the things she said that was really unfortunate was in a cross-examination, they said, well, if you would have called, if you would have mic'd, over to the police department instead of done 911, and you would have gotten the entire department over there immediately, he'd still be alive today, wouldn't he? And she said, yes.
Oof.
Who would say that?
I got to take a break. 850-233-9988. Man, that's so interesting. Fellas, sit tight. We got Brian Parúas and Scott Mager with us today. So if you got a question, you get 2 for 1. 850-233-9988. More to come.
We talk about what Panama City is talking about. More Kramer next on NewsTalk at 101. This is Kramer.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
NewsTalk at 101. 1, 2, 3.
Brian Parúas, Scott Mager from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team with us today. Your phones, 850-233-9988. Jason, you're up with the fellas. What's going on? Good morning. Jason? Are you there? All right, Jason, well, you can call back. So, at the top of the show, we were talking about, putting pressure on the insurance companies. And Scott, you and I have had that conversation many, many times. We were kind of going over about that. And we were mentioning the difference in contacting the correct people from residential, and then you've got commercial. And I think, I know that we had, we've talked about Winn-Dixie before. Winn-Dixie has opened a bunch of stores on Panama City Beach, but they've got like 2 or 3 other ones that are still closed, but I've been passing by and the lights are on, and I'm like, oh, okay, so, slowly but surely. But you've got a company like that. Usually, is it the same reason on a big commercial claim like that as it is a residential claim where the insurance company is just sitting around in their hands?
Three, that in a lot of these commercial projects, when you have major companies, there's oftentimes some delay in their understanding of what an insurance company can and can't do. And because they don't have seasoned expert lawyers handling these claims who have done this exact thing, they think it's okay that it takes longer for the insurance company to investigate and things work slowly. Usually, those are the reasons why you get delays. There are some that just are slow in the rebuild process, but most of the time, it is just a lack of having an expert, attorney who knows the case and knows how to push the insurance company to get the payment sooner.
Jason, are you there? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was wanting to ask Rump. Can y'all hear me this time?
Yeah, you're on with Scott Mager and Brian Parúas. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was wanting to ask Major, do you think that's a fair sentence? What Amber Geiger got, 10 years, would get out in 5 with good behavior for murder?
It's an interesting question. My sense is that 10 years was a good sentence. Whether or not she should get out in 5 is somewhat questionable. But, typically when you think about murder convictions, you think about somebody who's intentionally trying to kill somebody. And this was more of a second-degree murder thing. She probably would have been better to have been prosecuted, convicted for manslaughter, and that probably would have carried a more fair sentence. So I think that they sentenced her, in my opinion, as if she was more reckless in her killing of the person rather than murder. And when you have juries that are making determinations like this as opposed to judges, which is the common situation, oftentimes when they convict somebody for the higher crime, they're trying to make a point that it was wrong, but then they're softer on the sentencing because they realize the person's a human being who doesn't have a criminal history, who has shown tremendous remorse, certainly did that, at the trial level. And so while you can debate about whether or not she should have gotten the 28 years that the prosecution asked for, that was 1 year for every year that this fellow was, he's 28 years old. I think it was a fair sentence.
I don't think it was a fair sentence. I read an article yesterday, some guy got 45 years for killing a police dog. I mean, that's a bunch of crap to me. I mean, so you can go into somebody's house and shoot and kill them. I mean, what if he had had the gun and shot and killed her? He's defending his own. I don't know. I don't think that's a fair sentence. I think it's a slap in the face to Americans myself. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. I understand that, and I understand that there are differing opinions, and I'm not necessarily militant in my belief. I think if they would have awarded her more time, I think it's fair to say that might have been justified also. A lot of people don't realize that 10 years is a very long time for someone to be in jail. But I agree, you killed somebody, and they could have thrown the book at her and given her, 25 or 30 or 40 years. But still, 10 years is a long time, a lot longer than people think, and it'll change your entire life. And obviously, from the family's perspective, going and forgiving her and hugging her is a remarkable, extraordinary thing. And so I understand views on people who might feel that it should have been a lot longer sentence, and I get that persona. That's why I'm not militant about, oh my God, this is absolutely the perfect sentence.
One more before break. Caller, you're up with Brian Parúas, Scott Mager. Go ahead.
Yes, the shooting. I think there's more to this than that we're seeing, because first off, she was not called a racist, which that doesn't happen when a white person shoots a black. She was never called a racist. Any of that, none of that happened. So I think she knows somebody, or somebody way up is connected here, and they shut this down and just making it go away. Because a cop shooting a black, what's always said, they go nuts, and they didn't this time.
Well, in that community, there was a lot of discussion about the racist tensions, and there was a lot of pressure put on them finding her guilty. And I was on some national shows, a bunch of different national TV and radio shows, and they had certain people of color who were very, very adamant that if there wasn't a conviction, there would be a problem here. And I just think that people don't realize that this woman could have been acquitted if the jury believed that she was in her apartment, whether you like that law or not. She could have been acquitted, and I think that we can debate about how long the sentence should have been, but I can tell you that when somebody gets convicted of murder, that's a very serious conviction.
Whew. Man.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, cops are not treated very nicely in prison, as you could probably imagine. So it's going to be a rough, whether it's 5 years, 6 years, 7, 10, it's going to be a rough time for her.
No, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. All right, we got to take a break. If you got a question, 850-233-9988. Scott Mager, Brian Parúas with us. Phone number for those guys, 844-800-LAWS. 844-800-LAWS. More to come.
This is the Kramer Show on Panama City's information station, NewsTalk at 101. NewsTalk at 101. Plugged into what's going on, not only in the Panhandle, but all over the globe. Make sure you like our Facebook page at NewsTalk 101. We have fresh content around the clock, and don't be afraid to hop in on the conversation. We may use what you say on the air.
Follow us on Facebook.
From local news to sports to weather to entertainment, we've got it covered on Facebook at NewsTalk 101. Kramer in the morning, NewsTalk at 101.
Scott Mager, Brian Parúas with us from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team. We've been doing this for coming up on a year. Taking phone calls. By the way, the phone number 850-233-9988. And slowly digging out of this thing. It is interesting. I was going back through some videos this morning that were taken right after the storm. And also another thing too is my son's into videography and photography, and he went out and showed me some pictures of our neighborhood from the exact vantage point from before the storm and then after the storm. And when you live there, you kind of get used to seeing it every day like it is, and you forget what it looked like. And it really is, it's pretty damned amazing what we've gone through. The area is completely forever changed in a lot of ways. With that, let's get us some phones. You're up with Scott Mager, Brian Parúas. Go ahead, caller.
Mr. Parúas, Mr. Mager, morning.
Morning.
I was listening to y'all. Morning. Doing good. Still finding a frog's hair on Saturday afternoon. Listen, I have been listening to your callers call in about this officer and the man that got killed. And they all saying what they would have done. They didn't like the sentence. That's woulda, coulda, shoulda. You wasn't sitting on the jury. You wasn't watching the emotions and the people sitting out there watching the trial going on or the witnesses. You saw what was on the news. And these are the same people who every day won't walk the walk, but they'll walk the walk this morning. And I find it abhorrent. They say, well, hang them high.
Earl, you still there?
But that's Mr. Mager.
All right, you're cutting out there. Look,
Slaughter.
He doesn't even know he's cutting out. Looks like a lot of people want to talk about the Geiger trial more so than anything else at this point. It really is amazing. Have you noticed that when you've been doing media, Scott, that this is one of those times where it's a very polarizing thing and people are going back and forth on the verdict, whether or not she meant to do it, didn't do it, good cop, bad cop. Are you noticing that? Hello?
Well, now you lost Scott.
Scott, are you there?
You're losing everybody.
Yeah, what's going on?
Maybe he started playing tennis again. Is he on the courts? Scott, you on the courts? Over.
Yeah, I guess we've lost Scott. Maybe have him call back in. But are you noticing that too? That Scott. It's one of those things where it's. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Whew. Man, it took a long time to get there, but are you noticing that people are? It's one of those cases. It's kind of sets people. It's polarizing.
I think I don't think it will be. I think at the end of the day, because there was a conviction, there's going to be very little of that overall. But yes, it will. Initially, there'll be some of that. But again, because she was convicted and she's going to prison, it changes that dynamic completely, I think. It'll be a shorter run. It won't be in the news as long as we think it's going to be in, just because, there's really not much else to talk about. She's going to prison, and that's going to be, it's going to be a long stretch no matter how you look at it. It'll be a long stretch. Whether or not she gets out early, it's another thing altogether. But, there was a conviction, and she is going to prison, and that's pretty much the end of it. I mean, if she wouldn't have been convicted, who knows what would have happened? I have no idea. I mean, but again, I'm with Scott. I think we were leaning more towards a manslaughter charge just based on the facts. But again, we don't know all the facts. We're just hearing what the media is telling us, so we're not really sure what the truth is. We weren't sitting on the jury. But, obviously they made a decision based on the jury instructions, the way they were instructed by the judge. They weighed the evidence, and that's what they came up with.
Caller, do we have Scott back? Hello. Caller, you're on the air. Go ahead. Yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going on? It's back to the hurricane.
Sure.
If someone wants to call up and hire Brian Parúas and Scott Mager, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS. Are you guys getting a lot of newer people that are calling up and using you guys? I know I talk to Scott every morning, and he talks about the workload, but I'm hoping that we're getting to the point where people are confident and laid back enough to allow you guys to do it. Because I think you said something earlier about how people are different here than they are in Southern Florida. I think in Southern Florida, people were kind of used to hurricane-ish kind of things coming in there, and they probably have no qualms at all about using an attorney. Here, I think it is a little different.
Yeah, there's a fear. I mean, and I get it. Trust me, you see a lot of things on TV and you read things in the paper, and they're not always very flattering for lawyers. I mean, and there are, like I said, there are a lot of bad lawyers or a lot of great lawyers, but, that's what scares people. At the end of the day, this lawyer's a crook. He's going to steal my money. They can't be trusted. And again, we try to fly,
Sorry.
Hello?
Sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. My wife does that all the time. But yeah, so we try to fly above board. We have ethical rules that we need to follow under the Florida bar. So again, we're under scrutiny. We're always trying to protect our license because that's our livelihood. So trust me, last thing you want to do is have a problem with a client or them thinking that we're not doing our job or we're in cahoots with the builders. We're not. Listen, at the end of the day, if you have a builder you love and trust, use them. All we do and ask is that they're reputable, that they're insured, that they're licensed, okay, and that they provide us with the estimates necessary to prosecute your claim. That's all. And like I said, we don't care who you use. We'll make recommendations based on what other clients have said, testimonials from clients on who's good. But at the end of the day, I think the hardest part is, Kramer, they can't get the people there on their property to do the work. That's the reality. They have the money. Great, I got $200,000, but now the cost of the materials have gone up and the labor force is gone. What do you do then?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people talk. I hear a lot of people say that. In fact, I just saw an interview with someone on television earlier this morning on News 13. Caller, are you there? All right, I don't know what's going on with the other phone lines, but they're obviously not working.
Hacking. Someone's hacking your system, man. I think
it's the Russians.
Somebody overseas.
The Russians are hacking us. Yeah, that's another thing. I think it's. I don't think a lot of people around here have ever had to use an attorney. And I think that is part of the play. I think people are. Not used to having to pick up the phone and use the services of an attorney. And I think that's one of the most brilliant things about having Scott on a regular basis is to kind of, quell the fears, so to speak, because if you've never had to use an attorney, it may be an intimidating thing. And you guys kind of take some of the intimidating factor out of it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it becomes a cost thing. People hear, oh, my God, that lawyer, if I call him, do they charge me for every call? If I have a consultation, I'm going to get charged. No, you call us. we don't charge you for a consultation. We don't charge you for phone calls, okay? And if you don't hire us, we're still going to give you advice. It's that simple. We're trying to rebuild the Panhandle. This is our state, too. So if we can point you in the right direction, you do yourself, great. I do that 10 times a day. And you know what? And I feel good about it.
To get in touch with Brian Parúas and Scott Mager and to get them on your case, 844-800-LAWS, 844-800-LAWS, and stormhelpteam.org. We'll be back with Brian Parúas in just a moment. Stand by.
Smoke 'em if you've got 'em. Kramer will be back. News Talk at 101.
7:51. Brian Parúas from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team with us this morning. Their phone number is 844-800-LAWS. You know, one of the things that we talked about during the beginning of this whole thing a lot was AOBs and people having issues. Is that still something that people have gotten themselves into, and you guys have to step in, Brian?
Yeah, we've been dealing with a lot of that. At the end of the day, we'll get it figured out one way or another. We'll work with, these folks who sign the AOB. We try to work with the the group. I will call them the group of folks who maybe coerce them into signing the AOB. Everything is negotiable. Everything can be figured out. At the end of the day, sometimes a lawsuit is not the answer. Sometimes just picking up the phone and talking to these guys, and you get things hashed out and worked out. Again, litigation costs money. Litigation is expensive for everybody. If you have to hire a lawyer to sue the contractor, it's going to cost you money, and you're never guaranteed attorney's fees unless it's written in the contract. So unless there's an attorney's fee provision in that contract, you might be throwing good money after bad. So we try to avoid that as well. So if we can get on the phone and try to work something out for the client, we will do so.
844-800-LAWS, but that is, is that something that you're still seeing a lot of, that people call you for that?
We still are seeing a lot of it, but again, I think since the law has changed, and then again, the policies will reflect those changes coming forward, it's going to be less of an issue. They're going to have to figure out another way to do it. And again, I think at the end of the day, it's going to help everyone. It's even going to help that construction industry, because you're going to get the good guys, the better folks who are not coming and forcing you or coercing you into signing AOBs at your door and getting you to sign when you're stressed out and underwater, suffering from PTSD, that kind of thing. That won't happen any longer, so we hope.
Should somebody get an attorney if they hire a contractor and the contractor says that they're going to do something in a certain amount of time for a certain amount of money, and then the contractor just sits on their hands and the person can never contact them, never get them on the phone? I hear horrible, nightmarish stories about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the key to that is have the contract reviewed by a lawyer beforehand. It'll cost you next to nothing. You get it reviewed. You make the fixes on the contract that need to be made, and then you execute the contract, and then you're protected. So in case you do have to sue and invoke an attorney, then you're going to get all your fees back when you win. So that's the beauty of having the contract read first. Again, coming in afterward is never as clean or as easy, but obviously it can be done, and it's done often. Unfortunately.
You also get a delay because once you go back and forth with the contractor, they say they're going to do something in this period of time. They don't do it.
Right. And
even if you have a contract, then you've got to get a lawyer. Then you got to go back and forth and around and around. And while you're doing that, you're wasting time. Right. I mean, so,
totally.
And so that's another thing is that people at this point are so extremely frustrated because so many people are still living in campers and tents and everything else around here. And everybody. I mean, we do lunch with listeners sometimes, and to sit around and talk about
Everybody
has that issue.
Everybody. That's true.
But yeah, I mean, trying to find a plumber, trying to find, a roofer, trying to find somebody to put up a fence. It's not like it was prior to the storm. Nowadays, it's going to take forever just to get in contact with them, and much less get them over to do the work. Then I think, as you maybe mentioned earlier too, the cost and the expenditure of those materials needed to do stuff like that exorbitant. They're through the roof.
It's crazy. My cabinet guy, listen, it's hitting me as well. My cabinet guy, I've been trying to get him in my house for almost 4 months to come and do 2 cabinets. Okay? The prices are ridiculous. I can't get him over because he's so busy. It's driving, maybe my fence guy. I should have done my fence last year. I did it after the hurricane. Cost me another $1,500 to do the fence. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot. It's just a fence. I really get very little enjoyment from my fence.
We did the same thing. We did the same thing with our fence. We kept calling and trying to set up an appointment and everything else. And it took forever. And once they got out there, they dropped off the materials and took off. And I was like, wait a minute, where are you going? And we didn't hear from like 2 more weeks. And finally they came back over and they just left the materials laying there. So it's kind of like a tease there for a little while.
And listen, I'll tell you, people who do fencing, God bless you. That is some of the hardest work in the world because I did my own fence once, one side, never again. Never again. I think I was laid up for 2 weeks afterwards. It is really hard work. And I pretend to try to be a weekend warrior once in a while, and I got ice packs everywhere, and I'm on Motrin. Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun.
I was watching them. I was watching our fence guys doing it, and I was kind of amazed at how long it took. I mean, it's a pretty tedious job. It's not. You're not going to come out there in a couple of hours and have the fence up. No. There's a lot to it.
It's days of work and making sure all the wood is straight. I mean, I watched our guys do it. I was blown away. Even the fence. I mean, you got to make sure when you put the hinges on, it opens properly and they don't swing open by themselves. I was totally impressed. I mean, I would have never been able to do that. I mean, it would have been a mess.
I'm the same. I'm such not a man.
I'm a lover, not a builder. You know,
even like the lawn people that come out and do the sod and all that stuff. It is hard work.
I did that once myself too. And I'll never do it again. I tried laying sod down. Again, I was out for like a week and a half with my back. I go, what am I doing to myself? Why did I even try this? It looked easy. I go, how hard is it to put? Yeah, it's hard. It's very, very hard.
You watch a video of people trying to describe how to put down sod, and they make it look so easy, and they take out their little razor blade, and they cut it, and they go, you just measure it out, and then you put it down.
It's not easy, man. Oh. It is not easy. You know, I will never do that. There's several things. I will never pressure wash my roof again either. Just saying.
Really?
Yeah, ended up pressure washing my foot. You know, that was not a good look, my friend. I'm a disaster. What's wrong with me? I got to stop these things. You know, I try to be the macho guy. I try to be a Panama City man in South Florida, and I can't get there. I'm trying, though.
I'm the same.
Try.
Brian Parúas and Scott Mager from Mager Parúas and the Storm Help Team. Their phone number is 844-800-LAWS. He may not know how to plant sod and put sod down or build a fence, but I'll tell you got a damn good lawyer in him, though. Brian,
we try to be.
Thanks for being on, buddy.
Love you, brother. Hopefully we'll see you soon, man. Got a trip planned up there to go see our folks, and hopefully we can spend some time together.
I would absolutely love it. Thanks, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kramer.
This is live and local morning radio. This is Kramer.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.